Hello, 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 and welcome back to a wide open space. I am your host, the Reverend Dr. Nichelle Gidry, and once again, thank you for meeting me here in this intersection between womanist faith and spirituality and personal growth and development. We are here on the last episode of 2025, y'all. We made it. And this morning, I was listening to Soul Holidays by Sounds of Blackness, one of my all time favorite holiday songs, Christmas songs. And I noticed how they were talking about, I don't know how I missed this over the years, but included in Soul Holidays is MLK. I think the chorus goes, Christmas, the day that Jesus Christ was born, and then New Year's Day, Thanksgiving, MLK, so holidays. So I just love that Black folks include MLK in their holidays. And that's just, yes, there's so much to look forward to as the year is going to be turning soon. And in that spirit of soul holidays, y'all, I hope you had a lovely Christmas. If you are celebrating Kwanzaa, I love that for you and I love that for your community. We are in the throes of soul holidays, and I hope that you had an opportunity to and have had and are having opportunities to enjoy some delight. That was our last episode just a couple of days before Christmas. And I know that tends to be a really hectic time, but it doesn't have to be. And so I just pray that as you are enjoying this sort of in between space between 2025 and 2026, that you are saying no to some things so that you can say yes to rest, so you can say yes to delight, so you can say yes to whatever fills your cup before we turn the page into 2026. And I know 2025 has been a doozy for a lot of us. Um, if I am considering and praying for my demographic of Black professional women, I know that many of us had a really hard year. Some of you are in different work situations than you were at the start of the year. Some of you are in different places personally. And so I just want to take this episode to create just a very soft, gentle, and really loving space for us to just reflect together. Um, I was wanting to start this time off with you on a joyful note. So I thought about that Soul Holidays being one of my holiday joy anthems. And um, yes, that's just something I feel like we have to do, is just to be able to perform those works of spiritual alchemy that, maybe 2025 didn't go the way you wanted it to go, and some things may have come from out of left field, but sis, you are still here. And I am rejoicing, rejoicing, rejoicing with you for that. And so, because we made it to the end of the year, and God willing, we'll make it into 2026. I think it's a really useful time, useful way to spend time, to just look back a little bit, and not just for the sake of reiterating, but obviously the spiritual power of memory, and creating an internal and even like a written record of the goodness of God, is such an important act of spiritual care and discipline, so that you can take the time to conscientiously see God was always there. God's hand was covering and keeping and providing. God's presence was holding me and sustaining me and consoling me through all the ups and downs. In fact, today's scripture, we'll just go ahead and jump right into it, is going to come to us from Psalms 77. I love the Psalter. I love the book of Psalms. This book is full of poetry and music and real reflections on the gamut of what it means to be human and to be trying to walk with God and to be trying to walk upright. And here in Psalm 77, this is a psalm of sacred memory, recalling God's deeds. And here in Psalm 77, I'll be in verses 11 and 12. The psalmist writes, I will call to mind the deeds of the Lord. I will remember your wonders of old. I will meditate on all your work and muse on your mighty deeds. 13 is also really nice. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is so great as our God? Man. Whoo, that verse alone, it not only calls us into a space of reflection and remembrance, but it calls us into a real posture of working through the rubble and trying to find the gems and the jewels. And I think that that is a powerful practice as we are sitting here at the end of this year. Yes, it might have been an uneasy and downright difficult year, but what would it look like and what would it mean for you, my sister, to just sit for a while and through the ashes of it all, through the upheavals of this year, through the events and the circumstances that took you by surprise, through the relationships that crumbled, through the plans that didn't pan out, through the disappointments that left you reeling because you thought you had everything planned out to a T. Oh my God, what would it look like and what would it mean for you to be able to say yes and some God was still moving, God was still blessing, God was still showing up. And maybe I just have not taken the time to look for it. Listen, life is going to always life, and things are always going to come up and take place. But I do believe that one of our most defining acts of spiritual power and spiritual authority is one, remembering that God is always in our midst. And if things are not working out for our good now, then it means that things are still in process and they are going to work for our good. Sometimes we just have to go through the process. Secondly, I think that owning our spiritual authority when things go awry means that, and yet I still have my eye on how the goodness of God is still showing up in my life. I have my eyes on how I'm growing, how I am changing, how I am transforming, how I am becoming this more righteous version of myself, how I am becoming. Because one thing I've learned about God is that the love of God is not going to leave us where the love of God finds us. The love of God grows us, it matures us, it refines us, and while that might all not always feel good, it is always for our good. And I think sometimes for it to work out for our good, we've got to be able to sit with things, to be able to meditate on them, and to be able to take the ashes and the rubble, as I said, and find the way to catalyze them for our growth, our transformation, and our good. So let's talk about it. I don't want to do the typical end of year like highs and lows, right? I just want to kind of share a couple of stories and some of the wisdom that came forth from these stories. And part of what I think the project I'm being called to as I prep for 2026 is um I don't want to like hype myself up for this new year. I don't want to be pumped full of New Year's adrenaline. Um, I don't want to make any resolutions. I sort of want to flow very rooted and very grounded into this year. And I think, again, the project that I'm being called to, the inner work I'm being called to, is being clear about what I need to release so that I can make more space in my life. Um, what I am believing for 2026 is it's going to be a very transformative year for me. I have discerned that these last couple of years in my life have been for some real formation and preparation. God has honestly been recreating me from within so that I can be repositioned on the out. And I feel like that is going to happen in 2026. And so right now, I'm just in the space of creating space. Um, I've been identifying my own patterns and in various aspects of my life. I've been really getting clear about my energy drains. Um, and trying to do the work of letting those things go so that I can enter into 2026 with more space, more groundedness, and more love. Really, really more love. I don't want to be agitated in this new year. I don't want to be frustrated. Um, there's just some patterns that I've just been very frustrated with for a really long time. And I think it's probably just my personality type that I've just been trying to figure it out. And in this last quarter of 2025, God has just been impressing it upon me. No, 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 no. It's not about figuring it out. It's about getting out of that pattern. It's about stepping out of that space. It's about surrender. And I love it. I love it here, this wide open space. So again, just a few stories and just a couple of lessons that I want to share with you. Um, and then I just want to end on, just some things that I'm releasing, and that'll be part of your exercise as well. So the first thing that I want to share, one of the greatest lessons in 2025 that blindsided me in January and has just sort of been reiterated all year is there is no use in forcing anything. You really have to acknowledge when you have crossed over into trying to control and manipulate circumstances instead of stepping back, recognizing this is not happening according to plan, and accepting that now is not the time. This is not the way. This isn't working. And to put it in theological terms, God is not in this. God has not said yes to this. I think when God is in a thing, there is an ease to it. And this is not to say that we don't have to show up and do the work, right? That's the entire premise of this entire podcast, that we have to be able to recognize the work that is ours to do. But I also think that sometimes we have to recognize I've done everything that I can, and what's left to do, God's going to have to do it. I think that when God is in a thing, there's some elements of our efforts and our energy not being just met, but being exceeded. This is what I think Paul means when he writes, and now unto God, who is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all we can ask, think, or imagine, according to the power that is at work within us. There's something to be said about actually exerting some of our powers so that God can take it and run with it and multiply it. And I always say, like, add a little bit of super to our natural. And I think that sometimes when we start forcing things, it causes exhaustion to our bodies, it causes frustration to our spirits, and it can ultimately lead to a disappointed vision and a burnt out body. And I think sometimes, especially when you identify as an ambitious woman, it can be really, really hard to step back and to look at the situation from a panned out perspective and be able to just say, this isn't working. This isn't working for me. This isn't going according to plan. Um, but can I just say that there's such a freedom and such a grace in being able to say, "Mm." I surrender. I'm not going to force it anymore. I think we've all kind of been accustomed now over the last couple of years to this idea of ease. And, I have an interesting relationship to the concept of ease because I don't think ease is always possible. But I do believe that when you are um, working with God and partnering with God on a thing, there is flow. There's flow, even when you have to exert effort, even when you have to show up in ways that stretch you. There's a sense of, but space has been made for me and provision has been made for me to be able to do this. And my vision is being received and it's being implemented, and I'm able to grow, and I'm able to be impactful, not just influential, but I'm able to be impactful. Like, that's what God really desires for us. And so I feel like when God is in a thing, ultimately the thing works out. And I think sometimes it's hard to just be able to say, this is not working. But one of the greatest lessons and hardest lessons of 2025 has been the moment you cross over into trying to control the uncontrollable is the moment that you are moving from flow to force. Yeah, specifically, and here's story time. The first time this was introduced to me this year, because I feel like this lesson came up quarterly. So Q1 was actually around my birthday weekend. I wanted to celebrate my 40th birthday in a really big way, right? I wanted my closest friends to be here. I had this beautiful dinner that was planned at one of my favorite restaurants here. And a couple of days before the weekend was supposed to commence, things just weren't falling into place at all. Several of my friends actually couldn't make it for various reasons. Um, and there were some natural disasters happening all over the country that were impacting travel plans, and just life was lifing in a number of people's lives. And the weekend of, there was a mishap at the restaurant where there was the menu wasn't what was presented. I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to reopen my frustration, because even though I've gotten the lesson of the from the thing, I still have some unresolved feelings about it, and that is just my truth. Um, and so the following weekend, I tried to have a do-over when my friends could actually come to town. Some things, I guess, had resolved on that end, but once again, like, I just felt so out of control. And it resulted in just a string of disappointments and a string of, changed and canceled plans. And in retrospect, I really wish that I would have just been able to say, I can see that this is meant to just be a simple, intimate time with my family, those who are here in Atlanta. I can see that this is simply meant to be a much more of a quiet celebration than I thought. Um, I can see that this is not mapping out or panning out at all. Let me just recalibrate my vision, recalibrate my expectations, and just be grateful for this, for what it is, right? Because let's just say, at the end of the day, it wasn't so bad. Like, I had my hair freshly done, my nails were freshly done. I had already had my spa weekend. My personal stuff was done. I had my husband, I had my son, my parents, my siblings made it down. My All my nieces and nephews were here. Like, I really, in retrospect, wish that I could have just accepted what was so that I could appreciate it. Because really, y'all, ooh, not me getting emotional. That is really what matters. your family, the moments that you are able to create memories, the moments where your heart is open and you're safe and you get to just share some laughs and share some memories. This is what it means, I think, sometimes to just grow up, right? This lesson around not forcing and accepting and flowing was reiterated throughout the year, um, which sort of goes into the next nugget that I want to share, which is you have to align your efforts. Yes, align your efforts. Um, there's a lot of talk on the social media streets around this idea of alignment and this spirituality of alignment. It was even the theme for the year in Sisters Chapel, anointed and anointed for alignment, something like that. And I've been so taken by this image of my steps being ordered by God, and God will not order my steps um, out of alignment with God's will and God's path and God's plan. It's actually been something that I've kind of hung my hat on ever since Q2. Um, and this lesson was really clarified for me when I started getting really serious about my physical fitness journey. Many of you know that, I've always had a trainer in my life. My body and my physical wellness and well-being have always been really, really important to me. Just because I know genetically I might be predisposed to some things, and also just thinking about a lot of the statistics around Black women and our health and our medical outcomes. I've always just thought better to be proactive in that regard. Um, and it took me a little while to sort of get reacclimated to all of my practices after having the baby. But I got back to the gym this year, and it has just been so wonderful. God, I just has working out is really like a big part of how I make it in the world. It is how I set myself up for success for the day, for the week. It's how I hone in on it is the gym is really where me and God really just get together. Something about the press and something about the intensity and the movement of my body that just opens up a spiritual portal for me. And I always have to like take a moment after my training to like actually write down, what were my ahas during my workout. Maybe I'll make that a series on my podcast or something, because there's always something that comes through during the workout. But I noticed that I had a moment. This had to be during Q3, where I really wasn't seeing the transformation that I wanted to see. And so I had to get really, really like honest about I was not aligning my efforts. I was going very hard in the gym, loving my body by working out and moving my body, but mm, coming home and not really attending to my diet. Not really being super mindful of what I was putting into my body. And to be clear, I feel like I have had to really do some mindset shifting around eating and consumption, because when I was breastfeeding, I literally had to take in so many calories every day just to feed my kid. And now that we are on the brink of weaning, I just don't have to do that anymore. And I haven't had to do that at least for the last 6 months. And so I started working around that time with a nutritionist, and he put me on the anti-inflammatory diet. And y'all, I got my life. Yes, it was very sacrificial. Yes, it was a little inconvenient, but it really helped me to take back my power from food and drink, and didn't really kind of understand like the power that food has over or can have over us sometimes. And your preferences are just that. They're preferences. They're not needs. They're not demands. Like your body is going to crave and have its preferences. But at some point, you got to align your efforts. You can't be going to the gym, working it out, burning X amount of calories, and then coming home and binging on kettle corn and, whatever else, and the oat milk lattes with all the sugar in it and the things that I mean, I'm just naming it. I am a bread girl. I need bread with everything. Oh my gosh. And stuff just don't burn off the way it used to. I made it to 40 this year, and the body changes when you hit that fourth decade. My God, today. And so, like, learning my metabolism, learning, about my digestion, learning about how powerful it is to integrate simple things like turmeric and ginger and pepper and garlic into your beverages and then into your cooking, and being mindful about your protein sources. Um, the whole lesson of aligning my efforts and not negating them started with this wellness piece, but I've been able to sort of carry it over to my work life, to my family life, and also just sort of seeing my life as one integrated whole. Like, I want to be able to say that I'm I'm putting forth effort in my personal wellness and my personal development. But if I'm also saying that I'm a person who, like, my values are family and vocation and service, I want to make sure that across the gamut of my value spectrum and my life, that I'm aligning all of those efforts and that there's continuity, which to me just speaks to my desire to be a person of integrity, even when no one's looking, which really isn't that what integrity is, right? All right. So, my third lesson that I'll share is just really around. This is not completely unrelated, but it's about loving the body. Um, and I keep having this lesson come up when I look in the mirror and I have to start speaking affirming words to myself, because my default is not always self love. And so one of my big takeaways this year has really had to be around loving my body as it is, while I am in the process of transforming my body into the body that I want to live in. And I don't want to be heard by anyone as like body shaming. I love the diversity of bodies that exist amongst Black women and in our community. But for me, I have a particular desire and aesthetic that I'm aiming for. And it's not just for vanity's sake, it's because I live a very physical life between having a toddler, working at an undergraduate institution, and um, being a preacher, which is a deeply, deeply physical vocation and line of work. I need to be able to walk quick and walk light. And so I have had to be able to hold my vision for my body as desire for it to be, with the body that I have right now. Um, I will say I got really sick this year. I came down with the shingles, um, which, as we know, is a stress related diagnosis, stress related sickness. Um, After trying to rush my body into wellness and rush my body into a certain size. Um, and when it wasn't looking like I was going to meet this deadline and be able to do this event that I signed up for, um, I put my body into overdrive. And I will say, in retrospect, I think that I borderline abused my body. There was some deep deprivation going on and some hyper overexertion. Um, and I just don't feel like I had the right conversation partners, helping me to see that this is not physical well-being. This is not self-love. You have really entered into a dangerous territory. And that sickness sort of combined with some of the other things that were happening in my life that I refer to around the force. I just, I think God had to really like put me in a sit down season. Over the summer, I preached this sermon called Sit Down, Sis, and it was based on the story of Mary and Martha, and it was birthed out of my real life experience. Um, and I'm just being transparent here, you all, that the journey to loving ourselves, the journey to fully accepting ourselves, the journey to loving these bodies that we have been blessed with is a long journey. And it really does require a recreated way of thinking about yourself and loving yourself. So much of this culture has predisposed us to hating ourselves. It's in everything from the imagery to the music to the theology, even. And I one day I'm going to really take a deep dive into why so much spiritual content just feels like a glorified beatdown. Um, and so to take your spirit back, to take your self talk back, to take back your own love and gentleness and regard for your body as it is deep, holy, and sacred work. When I talk about my desire for my body, what I'm really trying to convey is my desire for longevity and for a quality of life that I pray that the spirit helps me to maintain no matter the different sorts of vicissitudes and changes that my body will inevitably go through as I age. And I pray that for all of us as Black women, because I feel like we're so hard on ourselves. And that is not of God, period. It's not of God. So I've had to get real basic and real fundamental with trying to rewire my thoughts. Um, I've had to, yeah, as theologically advanced as I can sometimes consider myself to be, I've had to just look at myself in the mirror and say, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are the apple of God's eye, just as you are." And that has been so healing for me. And so, shout out to my coaches and my trainer who have helped me to reclaim some love of my body. Shout out to that nutritionist that I worked with over the summer who helped me to take control of my cravings and really helped me to discover that the palate and the body's preferences can be rewired. You don't always have to have the sugar and the bread. It has been a process. It has been a journey. And so love your body as it is. Your body will always be worthy and deserving of your love. So, those were the three lessons I wanted to share with you. Forcing things is not of God. Number two, you have to align your efforts. And number three, love your body as it is. I also just want to just kind of share just some of what have been some of the highlights of this year. I want to shout out a couple of people who made some really amazing opportunities possible for me. Um, I want to say shout out to the person at Wells Fargo that gave me a VIP ticket to Woman Evolve because that was a life changing experience. I want to say a shout out to my mentor who gave me a VIP experience to the Cowboy Carter tour, including meeting Beyonce and Jay Z. I have so much eternal love for the people who held some doors open for me this year. And I just want to just say to all of us who are living in these great positions and roles that if God has allowed you to walk in a wide open space, God is also calling you to hold open the door so somebody else can come out there with you. In fact, it is one of my personal missions and one of my personal mandates for 2026. Hold the door open. It's going to be one of my personal missions all year long because some people held the door open for me this year and they were some really life changing experiences. So thank you. Thank you to the church up in Detroit that gave me such a restorative ministry experience, that really reminded me why I do this line of work and reminded me that the best ministry is about mutuality. It's about how we can discover God together and how we can mutually serve each other. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. A couple of things that I really honed in on this year, and I'm still in the process of sort of seeing where they take me, is I really got really mindful and attentive to my attire this year. In fact, I have so much content on my phone from some of the outfits that I wore, that I never posted and never shared because I wanted to just experiment and I wanted to try on like what some different aesthetics would look like. Excuse me, y'all. I have to blow my nose. I got a little emotional there. Yes. And so, like, yes, I started kind of shopping in some new places and taking a more mindful approach to shopping. I started following a lot of like Instagram accounts of, some style people, and just really experimenting aesthetically. And I did say that one thing that I do want to do next year is I would love to get like a professional closet edit done, so I can kind of work with someone professionally on, kind of leafing through my closet and just doing a deep edit for what feels good and right, as I'm moving into what is undoubtedly going to be a transformative year for me. Um, I also started playing again with my hair. I remember right around the time that I got pregnant in 2023, I had stepped into a self declared hair era that I was just wanting to just experiment with different looks. And I had like a Pinterest board full of different styles and then boom, got pregnant. And it's crazy to think about all the processes that I was sort of in that were sort of put on hold, at that time. And really, really feeling grateful that this year I got a chance to circle back to some of that. And my hair was one of them. And so I got some hair moves planned for the top of the year. And I'm really, really excited about, tapping into my hair as another vehicle for expressing who I am and what God is doing in my life, and really just more fun and more style. And this year also, I started thinking about the spirituality of rebranding. This was a huge conversation this year, um, around like personal rebranding, right? And these sorts of ideas of how we can reset our lives. But I got really, really sort of, I don't want to say irked, but it piqued my interest that so much of the discourse around rebranding really had nothing to do with our inner lives, with our interiority. And I saw this gap of, how 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 do you expect to rebrand if you're only changing what you look like or where you live or the person you're dating or your relationship status or whatever, but you haven't really rewired your brain. You haven't reset your spirit. You haven't renegotiated your your relationship to your lived experience and your story. You haven't claimed your inner power. And so I've just been really thinking about what is the role of spirituality and faith and inner work to this whole enterprise of resetting, rebranding. And I ended up on this language of recreation. I wrote about it on my Substack. And this is sort of where I think I'm going to, kind of park it for a little while because I was invited to give a talk next year. Um, and I think this is what I want to kind of hone in on. And so I just feel like there's just been a really cool sort of vocational reset as I've been really sitting with and massaging this question of what is purpose in this season? What is ministry going to look like? Obviously, you're listening to this podcast, and this is an expression of what ministry is looking like. And so I'm just walking in a new direction as a recreated woman, and I really look forward to putting some meat around the bones that I started to articulate this year. So, in closing, I want to just talk about this practice of releasing because I think around the start of the new year, we take a lot on, right? I want to do this. I want to XYZ. And we hype ourselves up on, like I said, this spiritual adrenaline and New Year's resolutions and plans and planners, even buying all this stuff. And, I don't think it has to be all that, y'all. Like, I think that it would be a blessing to our future selves if we could sort of do a little decluttering before we go into the new year. Just kind of enter in grounded and really mindful and attentive about what's coming and what we are happy to leave in 2025. And so, a couple of things that I want to leave, right? Waiting for quote the right time. It is always the right time to say yes to purpose and yes to calling, yes to wellness, yes to wholeness, and yes to healing. Circumstances are not always going to line up. In fact, when you determine that you are going to actualize. You are going to walk out into your wide open space when you've done the work we've talked about on this show already, named your desires, when you've owned your story, when you've started thinking about your vision and writing it down. You really ought to anticipate that circumstances are not just going to not line up, they are going to begin to conspire as resistance. But are you going to let that derail you? Or are you going to stay focused? There's no such thing as the right time when it comes to your destiny, your calling, your purpose, and the potential that God has invested in you. There's no such thing as the right time. And so when God says go, you better go. You've got to go. That is the right time. You've got to have an interior knowing. You have got to have your intuition on 100,000 trillion, if you will. That is when it's time to go. Because if you're waiting to see a green light externally, you're going to be waiting for a long time if you ever see it. But you will sense, you will know when it is time to go. And when God says go, go, period. Number two, being afraid of money. I've never really had something I'm releasing. I'm releasing my fear of money, my fear of talking about money, my fear of negotiating for what I feel I am valued at or the worth of my labor, my fear of just the basic stuff, right? Like I am somebody who has everything on auto because I don't really like to look at my accounts. Not so in 2026. I'm looking to grow financially. I'm looking to mature. I'm looking to heal. I'm looking to acknowledge my roadblocks and clear them out and end up in a really, really, really empowered financial position by the end of this year. I am releasing over functioning. Yes, yes, yes. Doing too much is part of what led me into the shingles this year. Um, And it's also part of why I had to learn the lesson of force versus flow the hard way. I'm done with doing too much. Thank you to my coach, Kimberly Brown, who introduced me to this concept of downscaling. Yes, you saved me with that, sis. You saved me with that. That sometimes your bare minimum has to be enough. And if you are who you say you are and who you know you are, your bare minimum is somebody else's full out. And so I've just got to start resting on that. I have nothing to prove. I have no one to impress. And so there are going to be some areas where I start to pull back because I've been doing too much. And some people might be a little disappointed with me, but it's all right. They're going to be all right. And finally, what I am releasing. Number 4 is I am no longer negotiating with myself. I have too much inner noise sometimes around, just going back and forth. I'm done negotiating with myself as if I don't know what I know. I don't want what I want, and I don't believe what I believe. I am letting my yes be yes and my no be no to me. I am done with the self doubt. I am done with the going back and forth with myself. Like, I don't know. I know. I know. I am a woman who has been through some things. I am a woman who has, at this point, I've lived some years. I walk with God every day. I trust in the Spirit. I trust in myself. I know what I know. I want what I want. I believe what I believe. I said what I said, and I'm standing on that. So my energy going into 2026 is real different, real different. Having spent some time thinking through 2025, I feel like I have my marching orders for this year. I feel like I'm going in a lean condition. I feel like there's some space that I've created for what God wants to do and the blessings that God wants to deliver into my life. And so I want you to do this, y'all. Take some time. Let's just kind of think through what this exercise can look like. I want you to sit with some of your hard stories. I modeled this in this episode. I sat with I shared the redacted versions of some of the hardest stories of this year, in the effort and in the hope of embodying the courage that it can sometimes require to sit with our stories so that we can actually get what God was trying to show us and what our spirits know to be true. But if we don't sit and we don't do the inner work and we don't go and do the inner mining, we miss it. And there's just some things that I'm just like, I'm too old to go through these things over again. So I just let me get the message now, apply it to my tomorrow, apply it to my today, and yield the benefits, reap the benefits of actually applying this wisdom. So I want you to sit with your hard stories and I want you to get what is yours to get from them. Secondly, excuse me, I want you to think about some of your highlights. I want you to put some jewels in your crown because, sis, you did not just make it to the end of 2025. You had some moments this year, I know you did, where God showed you God's goodness, God's favor, and God's light and God's love. And it was all around you and it was all on you. Do not give, and I don't talk about the devil that often, but do not give the enemy the gratification of thinking that he stole your whole year. Oh no. And don't even minimize the goodness of God by saying, I'm just glad I got through it. No, 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 no. Give God some glory. Call out those high moments. Call out those people who made some really meaningful transformative contributions to your life this year. Call them and say thank you. I praise God for you. I really needed your act of kindness or your act of love or your active and faithful presence in my life this year. Thank you. Put some jewels in your crown. It's not meant to be plain. Adorn it, sis. Okay. Next, I want you to name like some areas where some process or some refinement has gotten started and you're excited to see where it goes, right? Like I did with my hair and my attire and this idea of recreation, like God has really started something. And while I'm on it, God has started something with this podcast. And I have some ideas and some prayer requests in place um, that I am hoping you will stick around for in 2026. And finally, I want you to just kind of name what are you releasing? And I want you to really get intentional with this, right? Go a little bit deeper than I'm releasing this person that doesn't respect me, or I'm releasing this job that takes me through the ringer. Now, if those are parts of what you are releasing, name it and go a little bit deeper. What is it about that person that irks you? What is the boundary that that person has been allowed to cross that you need to firm up? What is it about that job that makes you feel undervalued? And how can you sort of step in and bridge your own gaps? What needs to be released from your own thinking, doing, and being so that your circumstances can begin to change? Take back your power, sis. And sometimes that requires you naming some real hard truths. All right. Mindsets, behaviors, patterns, habits. If you don't want to take it, don't take it. You don't have to. And I promise, when you release, what you are doing is creating more wide open space for God to do some new things in you, some new things through you, and some new things around you. I would not be surprised if you really stick to this and do this with your heart, this exercise with your heart, if by this time next year, your life looks totally different. And if that's the desire of your heart, then may the Spirit of the Lord do it for you. Okay. I love you. Thank you. We're almost at a full hour. I'm sure that this probably started to feel a little rantish at some points, but that is just the level of safety and vulnerability that I'm hoping to carve out here in this wide open space. And as we're on the precipice of this new year, I'm thinking that I might want to launch like a little community around the podcast so we can do some of the devotional work and spiritual discipline and process some of the exercises together. So if that would be of interest, reach out and let me know. I recently set up this function on the podcast website where you can send me a text. And so send me a text. Let me know. I would absolutely be interested in joining a wide open space spiritual commons or a spiritual community. Um, let me know. That would be really helpful. On that note, I wish you a fantastic turning of the year. May God's spirit of joy, hope, and anticipation be made manifest in your heart. May the weariness that has maybe encumbered you this year be released from you. And may you step into this new year with refreshed hope, with refreshed love, with refreshed vision, and with a high expectation of what God can do with a new beginning. Love you. Thank you for being here. Talk soon.